In this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to prepare and organize your SketchUp file when you would like to present a floor plan to scale, but with two different line weights. And we all know, guys, that when it comes to architecture and engineering and even interior design, when you're presenting plans, there are certain traditional drawing conventions that you would adhere to. And sorry, I also forgot, when you're studying as well, you have to adhere to certain technical drawing conventions. And one of those is paying particular attention to line weights and also line styles. But we're focusing on line weights today, okay? And there are a number of steps that you need to follow in SketchUp so that when you export your floor plan to layout, you are able then to apply the various line weights so that when you are presenting your final floor plan, you can clearly see those differences. So first of all, we need to utilize the scenes and layers function in SketchUp. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about that because I do go into a lot of detail regarding scenes and layers in my bundle courses for SketchUp, in particular course 3 and 5 and 6. But to summarize scenes and layers in SketchUp, although they're called tags now, they used to be called layers, but in SketchUp 2020, SketchUp decided to change that naming convention to tags, but it's the same thing. Scenes and layers allow you to control the views that you're going to display either on the screen or in print of your 3D model or your plan or whatever it is you have created. It also allows you to control different elements of the visibility of your 3D model or your floor plan in SketchUp, and you will understand this so much more clearly as I take you through this super quick tutorial. Okay, so first of all, I have the floor plan in its entirety on its own scene. You can see that right here. There's a little tab that says Final Floor Plan. So that's on a scene, and anytime I move around or pan around, I have set that scene up so that it has saved that view. Okay, so that's one of the benefits of using scenes. Anyway, I'm going to create two new scenes because I want to illustrate two different line weights in my final floor plan when I present it to scale in layout. So for every different size of line weight that you would like, you need to have a scene that corresponds with that. So I'm going to make the scenes tab active. I'm going to click on the little cross here to add a scene. And I'm just going to name that walls. And then I'm going to click in this box below just to confirm that. I'm going to create another scene called everything else. And then I'm going to click in the box below that to save that. And then I'm going to remove visibility off the scenes tray. That's our scenes done. Okay. And I just want to clarify that all of these scenes are sharing the same geometry. This is the same floor plan as in the final floor plan scene, and in the everything else scene, this is the same floor plan in the final floor plan. And I'm going to prove that because if I click this line right here, you can see that it's highlighted blue, and it's also highlighted blue in the wall scene, and it's also highlighted blue in the everything else scene because they're all sharing the same geometry. Now, what I have to do is now allocate certain aspects of the geometry depending on how I want the line weights to be displayed. And I'm going to make this really, really easy, okay? I want to have a thicker line weight for all of the walls, and everything else is going to be a finer line weight. That is the easiest way that I can communicate this with you guys. So I'm going to have a thicker line weight for the walls, And everything else on that floor plan will have a finer line weight. And that's why I have a scene called walls and a scene called everything else, because I need those scenes so that I can control the visibility of my geometry depending on the line weight that I eventually want to show in layout. This is going to make more sense in a minute. So we have our scenes created, okay? Now what I want to do is assign specific geometry to those scenes. So I'm obviously going to have a line thickness for walls and a line thickness for everything else. So on the walls scene, I only want the walls to be visible. And on the everything else scene, I only want everything else to be visible. And the way I do that is by creating tags, or what they were previously referred to as layers. So let's select the tags tray and let's create a tag called walls and then a tag called everything else. Great. And now what I'm going to do is select the wall scene and then select the geometry that I want to assign to the walls tag. And the quickest way for me to do that is to select the wall section here. So I've double clicked. Then I'm going to press Control so that I can make multiple selections, and I'm going to double click this section of wall and then double click this section of wall. So I, at this stage, have highlighted or selected all of the walls on the walls scene, and I'm then going to hover my cursor over one of those walls and right click. I'm going to select Entity Info, and then where it says Tag, I'm going to select the drop down arrow and select Walls. You might need to watch that a couple of times and do it yourself a couple of times before that becomes, a very straightforward process for you, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the everything else scene. I'm going to hover over my tags tray, and I'm going to very quickly remove visibility of the walls layer or tag. And I do that by clicking the little eye symbol right here. So I'm going to click there, and I have removed visibility of the walls geometry because it was assigned to its own layer. I'm now going to highlight all of this geometry that's left. I'm going to hover anywhere on one of those faces that's been highlighted, right click and select Entity Info. I'm then going to select the drop down arrow and select everything else. So all of this geometry is now assigned to the everything else tag. I'm going to go, now what I'm going to do is update that scene to save those changes. I'm going to go into the walls scene, I'm going to go into my tags tray, and I'm going to remove visibility of everything else. I'm going to right click and update that scene. So now when I select everything else, the only thing you can see on that scene is the geometry for everything else. And when I go into the wall scene, the only thing you can see is the geometry that has been assigned to the walls layer or scene, okay? So I have created scenes and layers so that I can control what geometry is visible in those scenes. And now I'm ready to export this floor plan to layout, because when I export to layout, I'm then going to be able to choose the different line weights for walls and everything else. Now we're ready to export the floor plan to layout. And I just want to remind you guys that you should be selecting zoom extents to make sure that your floor plan or your geometry is the full size of the screen and is centered. it's just a good example of efficient workflow, and it also means that when you do export to layout, everything is appearing as it should. Okay, so let's just save everything that we've done in SketchUp, and even if you forget to save and you try to export to layout, SketchUp will remind you to save your file. So let's go to File and then Send to Layout. So I already have Layout opened, which is why it has brought this menu up so quickly. I have created pre-constructed templates, and I show you how to do that in course 6 in my SketchUp bundle. So I'm going to select this template right here, and it already has my title block and border and key created, which saves me a lot of time. So there we go. Here's our floor plan. Well, it's one of the scenes from our floor plan. And there is our pre-constructed title block and border and key, which is all very handy. And what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to create 3 pages. A page for the walls scene, a page for everything else scene, and a page for all. And that's when I'm going to combine those 2 different elements of the floor plan into one floor plan on one page with the different line weights. Okay? And to correspond with those 3 pages, I'm also going to create new layers in layout so that I can actually assign the different line weights. Okay? Now, if I click on this floor plan or the walls, you will see that in the SketchUp model window, which is in the default tray, which is very similar setup to SketchUp, you will see that walls is currently selected, and that's because that was our last saved view in SketchUp. If I select this drop down arrow and change it to everything else, you will see the scene for everything else appear. Okay, so everything that we saved in the SketchUp file, including the scenes and everything that all of the geometry that we assigned to those scenes, is all being transferred over to layout. But at the minute, we now need to tell layout what line thickness we want to apply to those different scenes. And we need to organize layout accordingly so that we can do that. And I'm going to show you the order that you should be doing that in now. Okay, so let's just put that back to the walls scene. And you can see a blue bounding box here that is called our viewport. And this is just like, you know, your access to the floor plan or geometry that has been exported from SketchUp. And what I'm going to do just while I'm here is change that scale. So I'm going to select 150. And you'll see that being reflected there. It's just gotten a little bit smaller. And I'm going to change the quality from raster to hybrid because it's a better quality line. And I'm just going to reduce the size of the viewport so that it's nice and tight to the geometry. This is just useful for when you're going to start adding annotations and dimensions. And then I'm just going to center that floor plan a little bit and click in the grey area, which I consider a safe space. So that means that you don't select something by accident. And I think that looks okay, you know, for the minute. That looks fine. So what I need to do now is set up, as I said, 3 pages because we have our walls scene, then we have our everything else scene, but we're also going to have an all page in layout. We're going to combine those 2 different scenes, and we also need to create new layers as well so that we can assign our line weight. So I'm going to do that right now. So here's the pages window. I'm just going to double click there and type walls, and then I'm going to select the cross to create a new page, and I'm going to call that everything else. And then I'm going to create another page called all. And then just click any of the other pages just to save that. Then I'm going to go down to the layers window. You can see that it's already on title block. If I click on the walls scene here that we have visible, you'll see a little square beside title block. That means that that current scene is assigned to the title block layer, but we're going to change that in a minute. So I'm going to select the cross to create a new layer. We're going to call that walls. Then everything else. Oops. Let's try that again. And then another layer called all. Great. And I'm going to remove on every page because we don't need it. And I'm going to remove default because we don't need it. And there we go. So that's where we're at the minute, guys. And I'm going to assign this scene to our layer called walls. And we're also on the walls page. So I'm going to select the walls. You can see the blue bounding box. I'm going to right click. I'm going to hover over move to layer and I'm going to select walls. Okay, and now you can see that little square has moved beside the walls layer. So, and that means that we now know that that has been assigned to the walls layer, all the geometry that we can see right here. But as I said to you, I want to assign different line weights to each of these scenes that we have created. And in order to do that, I change this value right here. And I'm actually going to change that to, I don't really want 0.8, so I'm going to change it to 0.7 because I'm just fussy that way, okay? And then just click off that, and that has now changed that line weight to 0.7, but it won't be completely obvious to you just yet, okay? So now what we need to do is do the same for the everything else scene. And what we need to do is actually copy this viewport and then paste it into the everything else page and then update our scene. Okay, so just stay with me. So I'm going to right click and select copy, and then I'm going to select everything else, right click and select paste. Then I'm going to update that scene. So I'm going to change that scene to everything else. And you can see that that has changed. I'm going to right click, hover over move to layer and select everything else. Okay, because you want it on the everything else layer. Okay, and there's the little blue square to let us see that that is on the layer called everything else. But don't forget, we want to have a different line weight for that geometry as well. And it is currently 0.7 because that was what I had chosen for the wall scene. So I'm going to choose 0.4. But don't forget, they are actually on separate pages and separate layers. So we actually want to combine that now. So I'm going to right click and select copy. Then I'm going to go to the all page. I'm going to right click and select paste. And then I'm going to make sure that I assign this to the all layer. And then I'm going to go back to the walls page. I'm going to right click and select copy. And then I'm going to go to the all page, right click and select paste. And then what we're going to do is move that to the all layer, okay? And if we just zoom in, you will see very clearly that the walls have a much thicker line weight than everything else in the floor plan. And that's it, guys. Look how awesome that looks. This is proper technical drawing standards. And if you are an interior designer or an interior design student and you want to practice these standards or produce plans that require these standards, you can definitely do that in SketchUp. And I just wanted to mention that you will notice in the walls page, the title block is there, but in everything else and all, it disappears. And that's a very simple setting, guys. You'll notice right here a little page symbol beside all of these layers. If I activate that or toggle that, what that means is this layer will be shared among all of those pages. So if I click on those pages, the title block is now visible on all of those. That was just something I thought was very important to point out. And if I just go into this window, you can see this final floor plan. The title block has been completed. There's a little bit of branding. I have some dimensions and some annotations or labels, text labels. And again, if I just zoom in on that, you can see the different line weights very clearly. I would recommend doing this a couple of times. You probably will need to do this a couple of times before you can do it seamlessly. But it's a very useful workflow to know in the instances whereby you are required to produce accurate and professional floor plans using technical drawing conventions.